Today we're going to look at standard form and changing between different forms of a linear equation. So when you have an equation in standard form, you don't know what your slope is, you don't know your y-intercept, and you don't know any of your points. Okay? Standard form looks like this. And what's important to know about standard form is you have your x and your y, but this a and this b and this c are different than the values we had, like for slope, y-intercept, and point. Okay? Now, although we can't tell our slope, intercept, or point by looking at this form of this equation, you can use standard form to find your x and y-intercepts, and also it's a really easy way to graph. We're not going to do those two things today. Today we're just looking at the form, and we're going to be changing between all three types of form. We'll get into the graphing and the intercepts later. Okay, so for changing forms, what you need to understand is this is kind of like what we did when we had our literal equations. Okay, so you've got all the same parts, we're just going to be moving them around. And in order for you to do this successfully, you have to think about the form you're starting with and where you want to go. So when I'm starting here in slope-intercept form, this is the order of the parts of my equation. What I want to go to is standard form. That means my x value has to come first, my y value has to come second, and my constant needs to be all by itself on the right side of my equal sign. If I keep that in mind, then figuring out how to move things is going to be a little bit easier. So again, I know that my x value has to come first. So that means this x value has to move this way and come first. So if I want to move that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it. And I'm going to use all my properties that I know, and I'm going to add it on both sides here. So I know that my x value has to come first, so I'm going to get 2x plus y equals 8. And you can see this actually is in standard form now because my x value comes first, my y value comes second, and my constant is all by itself on the right side of my equal sign. We can also go from standard form to slope-intercept. This one's a little bit trickier, but again, look at where you're starting and what you want to end up at the end. We want our y value all by itself. So if I want this all by itself, it means this 2x has to move. And then when I put it on the other side, I want that x value to come in front of my constant. So keep all that in mind as we're moving things around here. So y needs to be by itself, so I'm going to start off by moving this x. And the way I move it, again, I'm going to use my opposite operation here. So these two x's will cancel out, and I have 3y. Remember, I want my x value to come before my constant, so I'm going to do negative 2x plus 12. Now, one other thing I want you to notice with this one here is it needs to be just y. Down here we have 3y. We can't have 3 y's if we have slope-intercept form. It has to be just y equals. So I need to divide by 3. Now, if I divide my left side of my equation by 3, I also have to divide my right side of my equation by 3. And this is where things get tricky, because what we have on the right, we have two terms. So the way I typically write this notation is I'm going to divide each term by 3. That way I won't accidentally forget to do one of those divisions. So here we go. 3 divided by 3, this is going to leave me with just a y on this side. Now, this can't be simplified. That's okay. I'm going to leave it negative 2/3 x. And then I'm going to look at this. 12 divided by 3 is 4. The reason it's okay to leave this as your fraction, think about it. This is our slope-intercept form. This, negative 2/3, that's your slope. And it's okay to have slope as a fraction because that's our rise and our run. Now, there's one more type of notation we need to look at, and that's going from point slope to standard form. This one looks complicated, but it follows all our same equation rules. We're going to go all the way back here, remember, and start with our distributive property. So first things first, we're going to distribute. I'll get y minus 5 equals 2x minus 7. Now I'm going to go back and think about what type of form do I want. I want standard form. So x first, y second, my constant all by itself. Since I want my constant all by itself, I'm going to move that. So I'm going to take this 5 and move it all the way over here to the right. I'm just going to combine those terms together before I get too far into this problem. So that's going to give me y equals 2x. Oops, you know what? I made a mistake right here, you guys. I forgot to distribute the second number. So if I do 2 times negative 7, that gives me negative 14. That was careless of me. I can't even get my color right. Oh well, the color's not going to match here. I'm sorry about that. All right, so here we go. So now 14 plus 5, that's going to give me minus 9. Now I'm on the right track here. All right, I want you to notice this right here. This is our slope-intercept form. So we just went from point slope to slope-intercept. Okay, now let's finish this up. We want to get to standard form. So to get to standard form, remember my x value needs to come first. So I have to take this x and move it to the other side. So I'm going to subtract this 2x here, subtract my 2x there, and now I'm going to write it. Remember, x value comes first, then your y, then your constant. Okay, so remember, a lot like literal equations, you just have to figure out what you're starting with and where you want to go in order to be successful.